Humanity Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Richard Acritelli. This is a podcast, is the production of the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center of Nassau County. On today's episode of The Fog of War and Humanity on hmTV, my special guest is Irv Adler. Will join me for a conversation today about his family's experience and survival from the Holocaust, both his mother and father. Irv, let's get started. Where did you grow up as a young man?
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks to the Nassau County Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. Great place. Shameless plug, if you haven't been here, get out here.
It's an unbelievable.
It really is, and thanks to the Humanity Matters team.
And walking through the museum, they've just done an unbelievable job.
It really is. Very well worth a visit, even for people who've been to other Holocaust centers. Rich, I grew up in Brooklyn. It's quite a miracle I grew up at all, or I'm even sitting here today, as you'll see from my family's story. I grew up in the area of Brooklyn that is often referred to as Flatbush. Today it has a little fancier name of Kensington. But this was around Cortellia Road, Ocean Parkway, Church Avenue. My own home was on East 5th Street, so that would be familiar Brooklyn geography to a lot of people. The area was a wonderful mixed area. We had folks from all over, really. And it was very much a working class community. How I came to be there was that my parents settled there. And they settled there after living in other places of New York City, the Bronx when they first arrived here, for example. But they were able, at what was a young age for me, to buy their own home. So I was only about 5 or 6 when they became homeowners. And so that being in about 1960, let's say, they had only been in the country about 12 years. And at that point, my father was already a partner in a business and a homeowner. Well, we'll get back to that and how that all came to be.
Pretty amazing accomplishment, right?
It really was, considering the lack of any formal education and things like that. I was a pretty normal Brooklyn kid of the time. Our circle of friends, my circle of friends was mostly other Jewish kids. But there was always a difference. And, you know, I wouldn't be able to articulate that difference very well until later, when I realized, of course I knew all along that my parents were Holocaust survivors and theirs weren't. Theirs had been here a generation or 2 or 3. Some had fought in World War II.
What age were you when you started figuring out that your parents had been through something very, very significant?
This is a very interesting story. They would always talk about it. My dad had a number, so there was certainly no mystery as far as that was concerned, and it was explained to me at a young age. My mom, as it happened, was processed without a serial number, but we would go to the country once a year, so we did this Borscht Belt thing in the Catskills. And up there, the circle was only other Holocaust survivors, people who had either escaped or served in Allied militaries or had been in the camps themselves. It was quite an unusual collection. So I knew simply from this contrast, I understood that I was kind of a different person.
Did they speak out in the open, or was it they tried to watch what they said in front of the younger kids, or it was already out in the open to begin with?
Well, it was in the open. There was no question they were survivors, camp survivors. They would refer to themselves as refugees, they would call themselves. They never used the word victim, interestingly, because the only thing they ever understood was to get up and keep moving forward.
Sure.
But as they lived and as some of these stories came to me, and we could speak about that as well, because Holocaust survivors, like some of the combat veterans you've had here, and veterans like my wife, her dad was career Army. He had been occupying force. He had been with the occupying force in Germany after the war. We know that people tend to tell stories to their families in a sort of fragmented way. You know, a story here, a story there. So I would always hear a story here and a story there about their experience. It was only later, and thanks to my brother Jan, that they did proper histories, oral histories.
Is he an older or younger brother?
He's 6 years older and lives in Brooklyn in the old neighborhood.
Was he born in this country or was he born in Europe?
A good question. He was born in Europe, and he came over in steerage with my parents when he was sick and just a few months old.
Were your parents like in a displaced person camp in Europe, and was he born there or?
They were already resettled. My parents were that unusual couple who were married before the camps, after hostilities had begun, but before the camps, and then were both survived, and then were reunited basically through a network that my mom was still in the hospital. My dad was kind of up on his own, and through an informal network, didn't have the benefit of computer databases, of course. Sure. But they were reunited and had settled in Czechoslovakia again. They were going to try to make a go of it there. I'll get to that part of it.
Now, when you were upstate, and you're up in the Catskills, it's beautiful, right? You have the mountains, the forests, lakes, rivers, right? Probably swimming pools up there.
Yes, of course.
Now, was it one immigrant group or several immigrant groups that were survivors that were up there?
They were from all over Eastern Europe mostly. So you're talking about the core Ashkenazi immigrant community. So these are the same Jews who had settled here over the course of decades, earlier in the 20th century, late 19th and 20th centuries. And what happened was that the war came, and so the same group of people from Poland, all over the Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia, of course, and all the different mix-ups and mash-ups of countries around that, Ukraine naturally. They were now caught up in the war, and so the same immigrant stock came over, but with their post-war experience.
Sure. Now, what's the biggest memory that you have of Brooklyn? Because now you come from kind of a different background.
Right.
The immigration isn't really different, but the Holocaust is, not every immigrant went through that type of horror, right? Did your parents try to make it as normal as possible there? What was the big thing that they saw as their American dream? Because they're in Brooklyn, they're outside the city, your dad's working, they have a home. I mean, these are all huge accomplishments.
They were, and thanks for pointing that out. And yet, in their circle, they were ordinary accomplishments. Everyone was expected to do that. You were here, you had an unprecedented opportunity for a number of reasons, and you were expected to move on and make something of your life. And my dad's favorite word was living a normal life. And this was something he hadn't known. My dad's story growing up was unimaginable. Well, let me tell you about my mom first.
Okay.
His was a little more imaginable.
All right.
Until the war, anyway.
Which side of Czechoslovakia? Are they Czech or Slovakian?
Well, they started off Slovakian and later moved to the Czech, what is now the Czech Republic.
What is their background in terms, because there's so many different minority groups there? And, right?
Well, they were ethnic Jews, they were ethnic Slovaks.
Slovaks, okay.
Okay, and so, this is the Slav peoples in different permutations. Let me show you a quick picture of them, if I can. I'll hold this up to the camera. I'm showing you this now from my bar mitzvah, and please keep this picture in mind as I tell you these unbelievable stories, because here you've got just your basic middle-class family at their kid's bar mitzvah.
Your bar mitzvah is what, 14 years old, 15 years old?
It was 13.
13?
So 54 plus 13. This is 1967, and they're quite the modern people in that my bar mitzvah was going to be kind of a nice one, in a nice hall and all that.
That's about 22 years after the war.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right?
They got smiles on their face. They're standing upright. They're like, it's a
And
moment of pride, right?
And deduct 3 years, so they came here in 48.
48.
So, it's really pretty amazing. So I'd like to keep that in mind because my mom growing up was one of 6 girls. Well,
now, were they very religious in Europe?
Well,
because you get like different backgrounds where people are immensely religious,
yes,
or the religion was there, but they didn't. It was just part of their life, that sort of thing.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So I'll show you 2 pictures. This is my mom's family here, and let me just get something off the screen. There we go. So this is the 7 people in my the 7 children, and this was a sort of a Jewish Brady Bunch in the big picture. And then on the other side, I've pulled out my mom's inset there. Skinny little kid, right?
Yeah.
Young here, 7, 8, 9, 9-ish. And she's with her older siblings. So the 2 girls behind the mom there, they are her children, and the others are his children. Each of them became widowed, and then they married, and then they had 2 kids together, my mom and the tall boy standing behind her.
And that's back in the old country there, right?
That's in the old country, and they look old country, although they could have also been in America.
Yeah, they could have been in Brooklyn also, right?
In contrast, here's my dad's father, Eliyahu. So here you're dealing with a really Orthodox guy.
Sure.
And so there was even then a range of observance and a range of modernity that people could gravitate toward, but no one, not even in my mom's more modern side, would have been anything but observant Jewish.
Now, because your grandfather was pretty strict with the faith, was your dad, did that go down to your father as well?
Well, in his story, he kind of had no choice. So to go to my dad's was an orphan by the time he was 6 or 7. A very different childhood from my mom. So he's an orphan very young. This is well before the war.
Now, your grandfather, did he pass away or?
Yeah, natural causes, both of them. As we try to figure out how both of them died so young, remember the prevalence of illness, the lack of medicines that we take for granted today.
Today, people are living well into their 80s and 90s.
Of course.
You didn't have that decades and decades ago.
No, a simple infection, a pneumonia in that era could be fatal. So,
could be it, yeah.
So my dad said that he realized at around 6 or 7, he realized he was an orphan. He did live with his older siblings. He's about 8 years old, and this is unbelievable by American standards. He's 8 years old when his older brother, who is the new head of the family, says to him, we can't afford to keep you here. You have to leave. 8 years old.
8 years old.
So they make an arrangement to get him to another town where there's some family members, and that's all well and good. But an arrangement at that time is very simply a meal a day. Not even from the same family member, because there's no way they could have afforded to give him a meal a day, 7 days a week. So they kind of farmed him out through a little network, a meal here and a meal there. When I bring this up, it's the beginning of a level of poverty so bone-crushing that we can't even envision it here in the U.S. There is no social safety net. A Jew is nobody. And the cycles of oppression, and they're documented well in the Holocaust Memorial here.
You really see like the anti-Semitism with the pogroms.
Of course.
You have a lot of Jews from Central and Eastern Europe.
Sure.
It's one of the main reasons why they come over in the late 1800s, early 1900s, right? And,
Rich people don't leave their homeland. So when you see the Italians, the Jews, the Irish, the Germans, and the Poles, and all these other groups coming here, people are desperate. And America, being truly exceptional, will provide them something they couldn't have dreamed of otherwise. So my dad is, caught up in this incredible poverty. Sooner or later, they can't afford him even where he's been. He starts to travel around, again, begging, doing odd jobs, learning what he can. No formal education at all. A lot of rabbinic study, though.
So he's more or less homeless at this time.
Yeah, he
right?
spends a lot of his life fending for himself and making his own way until his late teens, 20s, when my dad, being an endless, ultimate self-starter, gets himself into the produce business. He learns it by working for a guy in the produce business, teaches himself to drive a truck, becomes a produce wholesaler, and has a nice little business going. So we're up to like the late 1930s now. And of course, the war in Europe is already becoming an issue.
Now, you look at the Anschluss of Austria, then you look at the Sudetenland, right? So these were steps that Hitler was taking.
Right, exactly.
Right, to gobble up more territory and say Lebensborn, right, all the living space. Now, was your father impacted that early on by the Nazis? Because that's well before September 1st, 1939.
Yes. Right? So what's happening here, for example, and it's really one of these narrow threads that has allowed me to even to be sitting here. Hitler focuses on the Sudetenland in West Czechoslovakia, what today is the Czech Republic. It's sort of a crescent-shaped area. Yeah. And insists that it belongs to Germany because the people are German-speaking.
Yeah, 3 million German-speaking, right? Minority.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
You can see a lot of parallels between Hitler and Putin in what I'm going to say. So he is insisting that this belongs to Germany. The British, who could stop him, cave.
So this is a wrong that was going to be righted by him and his government.
Right. He was going to annex this land, which was handed over to him.
And then Chamberlain doesn't do anything with the British.
Right,
the French don't do anything.
Right. So they just sit there while this festers and grows. And Hitler, being appeased, understands that these countries are gutless and will do whatever he wants.
Meanwhile, Czechoslovakia was going to fight.
Yeah.
They had all those fortifications and mountain passes.
Yeah.
You had German generals that actually said to Hitler, you're going to get us all killed here. And there was a condition that Hitler had. I have this book. It's called Munich. And you know, you got a good book, right?
Right.
And you fold the page over.
Right.
I'm going to go back to that, especially teaching-wise, right? The problem is I folded over 150 pages. And I can't, for the life of me, I can't find it, right? And Hitler had this condition where he would have convulsions. And when the stress got to be too much, he would throw himself on the ground. And the German generals saw that. And they basically said, the Bavarian corporal over here is going to end up getting us all killed. We're not prepared for this.
Yeah.
What saved Hitler was, it was a Great Depression. They all thought about World War I. A third of France was destroyed. Chamberlain is almost anti-war. Hitler is Stalin is purging his own army, right? And the United States over here, we might as well be a million miles away.
Right.
With the big, strong America First. You had Lindbergh, Father Charles Coughlin, right? Making these crazy speeches.
Sure.
And the Czechs would have fought, and they could have hurt the Germans. It wouldn't have been an easy, drive it in where he goes into Austria and they're throwing roses at him,
Right.
It wasn't going to be that. And they kind of got stabbed in the back, right, with Munich.
There was a lot, yes, and there's it's certainly a huge topic. There was an American isolationism coming out of everything from George Washington's farewell address through the terrible experience of World War I.
Yeah.
A lot of Americans saying, legitimately, no doubt, Europe is nothing but one endless pit of warfare, and why are we there? And
this isn't our problem. And
right. Unfortunately, there was
that 25% unemployment dictates U.S. foreign policy.
Yes.
It really does.
Yeah.
Hitler's bad. He's strange. We know it's not good over there. But let them handle it.
Right. Unfortunately, it was two-sided as well. Part of it is those Europeans again in another war. And another part of it is, well, it's only the Jews.
Yeah.
And so sadly, as Hitler's taking Western Czechoslovakia, my folks, thankfully, are all the way east in what is now Slovakia, a separate country. They're so far east that it's actually a part of the country that is alternately part of Hungary, part of the Soviet Union. It's well away from these hostilities, and Hitler would not be able to return his attention to the rest of Czechoslovakia until far later in the war. And of course, you're also closer to the Soviet Union there, which was as a greater threat to Hitler as you could have, and they would. That area was somewhat secure for quite a while.
Yeah, 41, they'd go in there, Operation Barbarossa, and it's.
So they were at least comfortably tucked away there. My mother, while my dad was having this bizarre Charles Dickens on steroids kind of childhood, my mom was quite middle class. Her family were bankers, small-time bankers.
Professional people.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And
educated, right?
Exactly, at least just to that degree.
Sure.
A little more secular. But my mom's dad would pass away when she was only 11. She never quite recovered even from that. So she is now living with her mom and the older brother, and some of the sisters head out to Israel. They made Aliyah, the trip to Israel, the resettling in Israel in the 1930s, which many Jews did around the world.
It's amazing they were able to do that because the British, where they were trying to block it off. And
sure, even in the era of the British Mandate, there was still room for that to happen to some degree. But my mom's family is now in charge of this bank. With the Depression, the bank is failing slowly but steadily. And so now we're up to the late 1930s.
And they think they have responsibilities with the bank and business people.
Yeah, and also it's their living. But my mom was already taking in sewing,
Yeah.
So which she would do even here in America. My folks meet in, I guess it was 1939, and they are married around 1940.
So how old were they? The same age? Was your father a little bit older?
1 year older, almost exactly.
And when were they born?
My dad was born in 1917.
Okay.
And my mom in 1918.
So your dad's about 22, 23 years old.
They're
right?
young kids. I mean, they are not uncommon in those days.
Sure.
You don't want to be a 30-year-old old maid.
Yeah. But they're at that point where they're looking maybe to settle down,
Yes.
to work, have a family, all the same things
Absolutely.
over here, right?
Of course. They're trying to have a normal life. The specter of the war is hanging over them, of course. But they meet in 39, they marry in 40. And then my dad, 4 months after their marriage, is conscripted. And this is very interesting. And this is one of the stories that always confused me as a kid. So my dad was drafted into a Hungarian labor camp. And so you think of Hungarian labor camp, and you think of the concentration camps as slave labor camps. And these stories would go back and forth. Finally, in the oral history, it gets straightened out. So for about 4 years, my dad is in a branch of the Hungarian service that does work. It's like a work camp, but it's not a slave camp. They do work. They have leaves. They get to go back to their families. It's a fairly normal, conscripted life. No weapons, though.
If they don't go back, then they're breaking the law, though, right? They have to go back.
Of course.
Right?
No, this is like you're
it's almost like a parole, right?
Well, it's a furlough.
Furlough.
Okay, so you got your furlough, and you don't go back. You're AWOL.
I'm not saying parole that
right, exactly.
your mom and dad did anything wrong, but you're kind of like you're more furlough is a better word, that you can go, you leave for a little bit, but you have to come. You're responsible.
Exactly.
To be back here.
Get yourself back here, soldier. That kind of thing. Well, you're AWOL, and that's a problem. So they're living this life on one of these. On one of these breaks, my sister Feige is conceived. This is in 1943.
Wow.
So Feige is born, and then my dad, after a little while, is done with his period of conscription into the labor camp. And now the Nazis have arrived in eastern Czechoslovakia. I want to say here as a theme that what you see in my parents' stories and what you see around the world today and what we've always seen in history is the wheels, and this better than I do in more examples. The wheels of history turn and turn and turn, and they roll over everything in their path, everything and everyone. And so much of these histories are the stories of people being crushed under the wheels of history because, they either can't get out of the way or the forces are just too overwhelming.
Too strong,
yeah. So you have this situation where my folks are now thinking that, they've got the new baby and they're settled, and they come and they turn my mom's town into a ghetto. So they seize houses on one side of town, fence them off.
You know what? We're gonna get back to this.
Yes.
In the second episode of The Fog of War and Humanity here on hmTV. Please join us for this very important and interesting look at the Holocaust with Irv here, and we're going to come right back.